We started this conversation 2 weeks ago that's been in my heart for a while, and the conversation was about this idea about the divine feminine and how it has been silenced. And so what we did the last time when we got together is we started looking at historically, wait a minute, I don't get it. How did that happen? And so we went through all this idea of, okay, when we go back over time, and we go back way back, and we went back to it was just about 3,000 years ago BC, we had all of these different religions, we had all of these different thoughts, all of these ideas where it was extremely prevalent. And so we started talking about that specifically. And we talked about this idea of, in these ancient civilizations, how there was things like animism, which is where we believe that the spirit, the divine spirit, was in everything, whether it was in nature, whether it was in animals, whether it was in Mother Earth, or whether it was in whatever it was in. But it was in everything, and we totally honored it, 100%. That's what we did, right? And so we started talking about that, and then we looked at the different civilizations and the different ways that they all honored the divine feminine. And they did, whether it was Egypt or Mesopotamia or Greece or India or all these different countries had ways that they all honored the divine feminine. All of them did. And so we talked about that for a while. And then we also talked about how all of a sudden it seemed like things started to change a little bit. And so we talked about this idea. How many people remember when I spoke about the Code of Hammurabi? How this was a code that was back in 1700 BC, and it was the first time in history where we can tell where all of a sudden we started to basically define peoples and classes of society. And sure enough, at the very, very top, and by the way, this code, and this is what I was laughing about last week, this code was or 2 weeks ago, this was the idea of how this code was handed down by God, and it was chiseled in stone, and how it came from God, it must be true. And I'm sitting there thinking, wow, where in the Christian religion have we heard this before? But anyways, it happened back in the 1700 BC. It was created by Hammurabi, and it was inscribed in stone. And so all of a sudden it shows up and it says, well, if this was given to him by God, I guess we better follow this thing. How convenient. How convenient, right? But there was 282 laws, and what these laws did is defined everything. And it really talked about this idea how at the top of the heap, basically, were the kings. No queens. Huh? I don't get this. All of a sudden, you are going to change history and go, we don't have queens anymore? It's like, wow. And then we had the priests, and we have the official government scribes. And then finally, we start talking about the different levels of the way that people were treated based on the class that you were in. And where did we find the women? Not exactly underneath the slaves, but just above them. How convenient. How convenient. We talked about that. And so it was in this time frame, about 1000 BC, where you actually still, though, even though that was starting to happen, and remember, things don't happen overnight. So I'm explaining it to you, the Reader's Digest version, but actually what happens is this has taken hundreds and thousands of years. Okay? So I'm going back to about 1000 BC, and you were still able to worship the different deities, the different divine feminine, the different divine goddesses, but this is where monotheism starts to come in. It's slowly but surely starting to come in, right? And so all of a sudden, about 1000 BC, this is where all the Abrahamic religions came in. This is where Abraham started hanging out with God, or Yahweh, as it was called, and all of a sudden, Abraham was the father of the three Abrahamic religions, the Christians, Jews, and the Muslims, right? So right around 1300 BC to 1000 BC is when Judaism really starts to kick in a little bit more. And then, of course, we start talking about when Jesus comes around, and all of a sudden Jesus is born, and then Jesus is crucified. So now we've got the Christian religions are hanging out. And then about 600 AD is when all of a sudden we have Muhammad talks to the prophet, talks to the prophets and gets these teachings, and then boom, we have the Muslim society and starts to wake up at about 600 AD, right? So we talked about that, and then, so the world's kind of happening, and these things are moving and shaking, and then all of a sudden, the Roman Empire starts to take off, and we talked about this idea that what happened was Emperor Constantine all of a sudden said, hey, like, we're kind of hanging out, and he just became a Christian, and all of a sudden he goes, yeah, but it's confusing. It's because over here on the east side of Europe, we got this is being taught and trained, and over on this side of Europe, we got this is being taught and trained, and we're thinking like, hey, man, like, this ain't cool. So I'll tell you what, I think it'd be a really cool idea if we form a council. Sounds like fun. Let's have a council. Ooh. And we're going to invite everybody in, and we're going to try and figure this thing out. So conveniently, they decide to have the Council of Nicaea, which took place in 325 AD. And it happened to be, guess who they invited to the party? All men. 300 bishops. All came together and say, hey, we got to figure this thing out. And so they created the Nicene Creed. And in that creed, that is what basically used. They had rules in there like we believe in God the Father, we believe in Jesus Christ, we believe in the Holy Spirit, and. And I went through all of those last time. If you want to see that, we went into every single nook and cranny of it. And then we also talked about this idea of the impact that that had, because remember, it's the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire is, the Roman Empire. It's taken over the entire planet. But they didn't just do that. The other thing that they do is there was a couple of councils after that, right after that. In the same time frame, 363 AD, there was the Council of Lucidia, there was a Council of Hippo, cute, and Carthage. And it was at those different councils is where they said, okay, great, we've got the message we want, but there's a lot of stuff that's out there that's kind of floating around that we don't want. And so what did they start doing? So they started taking away all of the teachings, except for what they came together with the Council of Nicaea. In those teachings, the book of Philip, the book of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, and others. And they took them away. Not only did they take, and basically what he said at that point in time was, go get rid of them, destroy them. He told all the monks at that point in time, destroy it. And so that's what they did. And not only that, so then we go into, so now we got post-Council of Nicaea and these other councils. And so what happens is, I'm going to say roughly from 400 AD until about the 1800s is what I'm calling the Dark Ages. And when I say dark, yeah, the Dark Ages were in there, but also you've got the Holy Wars in there, you've got all kinds of stuff. And to make a long story short, none of it's really pretty, especially when it comes to the way that was the divine feminine was treated. And it was almost like what happened is it was just completely or tried to be snuffed out. But it wasn't. So we've got this time frame that goes through, and in my opinion, then all of a sudden, if you really study it and start looking at it, what you realize is that what happens in about 1800, things start to shift. I had this really cool chart I was going to show you. I'm not going to show you the chart. But what was on that chart was some really, really super powerful women. And I'm going to share this with you because it's from Mike's point of view in the New Thought movement. And I'm sure if I had time, and I'm sure if we had a conversation right now, everybody in here could probably say, yeah, but what about her? And what about her? And what about her? And what about her? I know that. But I'm focusing right now on New Thought. So there was this beautiful soul's name. It was Emma Curtis Hopkins. And we know, Unity people know Myrtle, right? Well, guess who Myrtle learned from? Emma. And guess who Emma taught? If I had the chart up here, you would see that Emma taught hundreds and thousands of people. She was a powerhouse in terms of her impact on what happened after her. And she started impacting, and people started studying with her, and she started to impact Myrtle. And then Myrtle all of a sudden does what Myrtle does. You guys have heard the story. So Myrtle basically heals herself, but it wasn't just that in terms of the divine feminine. So Emma shows up, she's cranking. Myrtle shows up, she's cranking. But also Charles is hanging out, and he starts to go in correspondence with Emily Cady. For those of you that don't know, Emily Cady is the one who wrote Lessons in Truth, one of the foundational pieces for Unity. And Lessons in Truth, she started having a correspondence with Charles, And Charles is like, girl, you are nailing this stuff. And so they start sending these letters back and forth over the course of a year. Those letters are what became Lessons in Truth. Huh? Yeah. There's some other things that start to happen. And now remember, the Catholic Church at the Council of Nicaea said destroy everything. And so they destroyed it. At least they thought they destroyed it. What happens, basically, is back in 1896, they were in Egypt. There was an archaeologist who discovered something that is now commonly referred to as the Berlin Codex. The reason it's called the Berlin Codex is because the man was from Germany, so they called it the Berlin Codex. What was in it? It was basically 66 pages, and it contained, are you ready? The Gospel of Mary. It contained the Gospel of John. It contained something called the Sophia of Christ, which was the conversations that Jesus had when he came back from the resurrection. How would you like to read that? Would that be killer? Mm-hmm. And then something that's called the Act of Peter and other things. But there were these 66 pages, and they were discovered. But there was a problem with it. The guy that discovered it was like, yeah, I'll get to it one of these days. And he sat on them. And then he thought he would start putting them together. But then all of a sudden, well, historically, what happens in the early 1900s? World War I. That happens, and then all of a sudden, he goes like, I think I'll start working on it again. World War II. And nothing happens until about 1955, excuse me. And in 1955, they publish these books. And go figure, those books sound a little bit different than what we have been told, right? So, I'm going to share with you some thoughts of what was in the Book of Mary and see if you don't find it to be just a little bit different for all of us traditional Christians, what was said in the books. Mary, not Peter, was the one with the deepest spiritual insights and is Jesus' most trusted disciple. What? Really? Yeah. The Book of Mary rejects the church authority structure. She ain't putting up with that. No, she's not. She's not putting up with it. Right? Other thing that's in the Book of Mary, we are all inherently good. We're not born in original sin. What? Really? My God. Sin, the actual definition is simple. It's forgetting the truth and the reality of your soul. It's not something that you do that's going to condemn you to this fiery place called hell for the rest of eternity. So there really isn't any talk of heaven or hell or anything like that? Nope. Not a peep. Not a peep. And finally, one of the other thoughts, it's beautiful. There's some pages that are missing in the Book of Mary if you study it. There's some missing pages in the middle. But the importance of remembering the Christ within. Not some God out in the sky pointing fingers, holding you to a list of things that if you do, you're going to have a good thing, and if you don't, you're going to wind up spending the rest of eternity in hell. It ain't there. It's not. Is that just a little bit different than what we've been told? So one of the things she says is, be on your guard so that no one deceives you by saying, look over here and look over there. For the child of true humanity exists within you. The child, the Christ, exists within you. Follow it. Those who search for it will find it. Okay, let me get this straight. So I don't have to go to church. I don't have to throw money in a plate. I don't have to go to a priest. I don't have to go repent. I don't have to go into confession. I can find this thing within me, and it's going to be between me and God? Am I getting this right? Oh, yeah. You're getting it right. You're totally getting it right. The other thing that you find out is that Peter had an issue. He had an issue with Mary. He really, really did. So I'm going to share with you, and I got a couple of books too, because I love books. Mary Magdalene Revealed, for anybody that's interested in it. Yeah, it's a great book. One of my faves. I did a book study on this a couple of years ago, and I may do it again. So in this, it says, in one of the readings that they found, Mary says to Jesus, "My Lord, my mind is understanding at all times that I should come forward and give the interpretation of the words which wisdom spoke." So in other words, I should be speaking up. "But I'm afraid of Peter, for he threatens me and he hates our race." And just from a historical standpoint, in the first century of the Roman Empire, when Christ and Mary lived, the hierarchies and existed were entrenched. The female sex, the race of Mary Magdalene, belonged to the race of women, was considered property, more disposable, and less valued than a man. Men, especially Roman men in power, were seated up there in the highest echelons and hierarchical structures. Christ's love for and partnership with Mary, and we're going to talk about that partnership in a minute. No, I didn't forget it. Virtually a slave in Peter's eyes, that's how he viewed Mary. The lowest of the lower level of existence caused Peter extreme distress, confusion, and threatened his world order. How could Christ love Mary more than him? How could Christ love Mary, a woman, more than him, a man? This was a breach in the structure of power that his own power depended on. So he was threatened, right? She goes on to say in the book that she was reading a part of, this was in Philip, and he says that this is finally when Peter goes, uh-oh, I guess I need to start paying attention. Maybe she is all that in a bag of chips. And he says to her that he knows that Christ loved her more than all other women. He asks her to tell them and the other disciples what Christ told her that he didn't tell the disciples before he was crucified. And then Mary responds to him by saying to Peter, "I will teach you about what is hidden from you." What? What's going on with this whole Mary thing? I'm not sure I get it or I understand it. And so something's going on with the whole Peter and Mary thing, or excuse me, Jesus and Mary thing. And one of the quotes in the book of Philip that says the following: "The teacher loved her more than disciples, and he often kissed her on the mouth." Well, that's unusual. Why would Jesus kiss somebody on the mouth often? Where do we see that happening? You mean maybe, just maybe, there was something going on between Jesus and Mary Magdalene? Just maybe? So then you really start to study some things. And another one of the books that I absolutely love and adore is something called the Sophia Code, for those of you that know this. And I'm going to just share a couple of things in it. Because for Mike, and by the way, I don't expect anybody to believe anything that I believe, and it's okay if you don't. There's no, do you. That's what I tell everybody, do you. You'll figure out your way home. But I just want to share with you, in it, Mary is channeled, and she tells a little bit about her story. And I just want you to hear a couple of these things. She says she's talking about how her and Jesus met, and then she's talking about how they start going out and they start doing their thing together. She says, "Almost immediately, we began training and initiating male and female disciples to prepare the food of seekers that would hear of Jesus' miraculous healing abilities." Do you notice when she said almost immediately, she didn't say he? What did she say? We. We did it. We had a core inner circle of devotees who would assist us in training our outer circle of many more initiates. The combined quantum energy field that Jesus and I created in our highly refined work together magnetized people to join our movement from around the country and also from other parts of the world. Well, that doesn't sound like it was just Jesus. Sounds to me like someone else might have been involved with this just a little bit. Just a little bit. She goes on to say, along with Mother Mary, Jesus became my greatest friend and spiritual ally. At our large gatherings, we would often sit side by side, yet at a designed distance, co-directing the collective consciousness of the larger crowds. Our individual embodiments were so magnetic that those who were meant to receive healing work, empowerments, and teaching directly from me would line up before me. I don't remember stories in the Bible where people were lining up. I didn't hear that. Did you guys read that part? I missed that section. I didn't hear about it. I heard a lot about people lining up to see Jesus, lots. I didn't hear about this part, though. Those ready to receive their empowerments directly from Jesus would line up before him. Our disciples and initiates would encircle us and assist as needed. It's just fascinating. Finding this very interesting. And finally, I never felt that I was beneath him or in servitude to Jesus in any way. His integrity was immaculate, and he devoted acts for reconciling the divine feminine went above and beyond every day. Our spiritual alliance encoded humanity's collective consciousness with the true template for the reconciliation of the divine masculine and the divine feminine Christ energies. I'm going to read that again because in my mind, when I read this and I think about it and I feel it, I know this is where we are going. And so I'm going to read it again. Our spiritual alliance encoded humanity's collective consciousness with a true template for the reconciliation of the divine feminine and the divine masculine Christ energies. I don't know, but that's like a little bit, no, not a little bit. That's actually a lot of bit different than everything that I've read. Yeah. As we've studied this over the last couple of talks, I hope, if anything, that you take away from this is this thing called the divine feminine and how it was absolutely part of our existence. And there was a little phase we went through, and now it's starting to come back. In my opinion, since the 1800s, it's gaining momentum. And I think it's even coming now in stronger than ever. And I think, to me, it's starting to feel like a tidal wave is really what I feel like is going to happen. And so as I started to think about this, I said, well, what is it that we can do about this? And when I really thought about that, and it was simple, the thought just said, hey, go do the opposite of everything they did when they shut everything down. If you do that, that would be a really good start. And by the way, in my mind, this is a start. It's a beginning, not the end. This isn't the only blueprint, but like Jesus or Mary said, there is a template to bring the two of them together. I don't know about you, but I'm signing up because I want to figure out what that template is. How about anybody else in here? Thank you. Yes, let's figure it out. So what did they do? Well, when you look at it, when they started to reverse it, they quit honoring it. They completely shut it down. They quit listening to it. And eventually, what did they do? They silenced it. What if we just do the opposite of that? What if we started to do that? So what if instead of not honoring it, we started to honor it fully and acknowledge it fully? What if we started to listen to it like we used to? Not a bad idea. What if we started to be open to this idea that actually it's here, and all we have to do is give it an inch, give it a mile, give it 100 miles. Let it start to come back wide open and start encouraging, especially the women, to step forward in your power fully and be the true representation of the divine feminine that you are, because you are a brilliant reflection of that. What if we started doing that? We start honoring it, we start listening to it, we start being open to it, and we give it a voice. Sound like a bad, decent idea? What can we do individually? Well, first of all, some suggestions. And again, I wish I had the slides. It would be so cool. How about if we started to do our own inner work? Because I don't care about anything else. If you're not doing your own inner work, nothing's going to change. You can sit there and blab all you want to, but until you start doing that, nothing's going to change. Do your own work. Let's start there. And then what? Well, what if we start doing collective work together? Huh? Yeah. What if we start doing some really cool stuff together? That would be cool. And start having conversations about this. And start acknowledging it and embracing it and letting it come forward. One of the things that you're going to see here in the next 6 months here is we used to have guest speakers come in. And I'm really sorry about this, but it's just historically that's what happened, is it just wound up being guys. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't like, hey, we're going to go get a bunch of guy guest speakers. That is not how it happened at all. It just happened that they were all guys. Well, guess what? Not anymore. We've actually got some people that are going to be coming in. Some of them are sitting in this room right now, and we are super excited to have them come and share their voice and their divine feminine, so that we can start to understand and we can feel it, what it feels like to have somebody fully embodied in their own divine feminine and share that message so that we can start to feel it. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited about that. So that's something that we can start to do. So we do these things so that ultimately, to me, in my mind, because I think what happens is when some people hear this stuff, they're like, oh my God, it's going to be all this feminine stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, for a minute. But ultimately, what I believe in, again, this is where the really cool thing that I made would be cool to see. But what am I really thinking? What do I feel in my heart is the right thing? It's right here. It's taking the divine feminine and divine masculine. It's going like this. And then it's taking it like this. And then it's bringing us right here. It's bringing us back into the heart. Yes. And let's do this dance. And you know, I just want to mention a couple of people recently who I think, to me, embody the perfect balance of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And I just want to give a shout out to two people sitting in the back of the room that are always quiet, they're always peaceful, they're always calm. But to me, they're almost the most beautiful example of that balance, and that's Carl and Ortrune Franklin. Thank you both for that example. But we need more. We need more of this. And so I welcome you to this conversation. This isn't about Mike. It's not. It's about us. It's about us standing into our divinity and honoring all of it, not just a part of it. Look, I don't know why, but I actually do a little bit. I'm not going to go into that. That's a whole nother talk. But like, we had to go through that stuff. And it was ugly. But we kind of agreed to it for bigger cycles. So some of you know what I'm talking about, and it's okay. But there was bigger cycles at play. And we're kicking out of the old cycle and we're going into the new cycle where we can actually finally stand fully into our own power. And that's going to include both the divine masculine, the healthy divine masculine, and the healthy divine feminine. And guess what? That's what we signed up for. That's what you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you signed up for. We all did. So we're going to do this together. And you know what? There's times we're going to get it right and we're going to knock the living you-know-what out of it. And there's times where we're going to screw it up. Why? Because we're meatheads. But can we at least start the process of bringing this back into balance, which is, in my opinion, what humanity so desperately needs? It doesn't need a different political party. It doesn't need more of whatever it is they say we need more of. No, it doesn't. It needs us to go back here, and it needs us to come together and create this new existence out of love. I think that sounds like a really good time. Thank you for being patient with us this morning from a technology standpoint. Thanks, guys, for trying your hardest to make it work. I know that things happen. But I really do invite you into this process with me. I have no idea what it's going to look like. If you do, please come talk to me, and we'll start making plans. But here's what I do know. As long as we're open to inviting God in to let God show us how to do it, we're going to do just fine. We're going to do just fine. So with that, thank you so much for coming in. You are absolutely, each and every one of you is just absolutely the most beautiful reflection of the divine that I could ever hope for. And we are so lucky and blessed that you are here. You're doing really good work. You are. It's amazing. You're magical. You're powerful. You're needed. All of those things. And you're doing a great job. Thank you to each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart. It is an honor and it is a privilege to be here and sharing these times with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless.
Hey, it's Reverend Mike here. I just wanted to stop for a moment before you get on with your day, and thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. It means the world to us, and I just wanted to let you know if there's anything that we can do to make your experience even better, please do not hesitate to reach out by going to our website. I also wanted to offer you the opportunity for us to get together and sit down so I could get to know you a little bit better and answer any questions that you have. I can either do that by either getting together in person, have a cup of coffee, or we can meet online via Zoom. If you're interested, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach me at michael@courage2thrive.com. And lastly, if you find these messages are helping you, we would be tremendously grateful if you'd consider donating to the center. The best and the easiest way to do that is simple. Just go to our website. Again, thank you so much. Hope you have a great day. Hope you're doing well. God bless, and we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye now.